Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got winter weather advisories out here along the Alaska Range through 6 p.m. 6 p.m. on Monday, and that's for 2 to 5 inches of snow, occasionally mixed with light freezing rain. And that extends on into the northern Kuskokwim Valley there in the greater McGrath-Nikolai areas for about the same type of conditions, maybe not so much 2 to 5 inches of snow, something less, but could be some mixed areas of freezing rain. And then here for the lower Yukon River Valley and Yukon Delta, as well as northward there across the Nulato Hills, south coast of the Seward Peninsula over to Nome, winter weather advisory out until tomorrow morning or into tonight for areas of freezing rain, light freezing rain, causing conditions to be a little slicker than they normally would for late in the latter part of November. Anyway, moving on to satellite imagery, you can see clouds here across the Seward Peninsula from off the coast, off the Yukon Delta coast. They're associated with a trough right through this area. Back to the west, wind flows a little more north-northwesterly, with northerly winds actually catching the western side of the Seward Peninsula, gusting about 35 miles an hour there at Gamble, out of the north and northwest. And we've got a weakening front here, a occluded front, pushing across the western Bering Sea that really isn't doing much over the Aleutians. Brought a little bit of rain earlier today in toward Shimia. That pushed in toward Adak in very light amounts. And winds, westerly winds across the area there, 15 to 35 miles an hour. Maybe some few higher gusts, and then the next system, cloud mass associated with that, approaching the Shimia area late this afternoon, or actually at mid-afternoon. Kind of in a break there over the Pribilof Islands a little bit, but some showers down to the Fox Islands. Also along the Alaska Peninsula, kind of showery. Looks like possible clearing occurring there along the north coast of the Bristol Bay areas, Dillingham, Togiak, but not quite into King Salmon. Then we have a system, low pressure, coming northward along the, or south of Kodiak there, with a frontal boundary still south to north flow here into the North Gulf Coast. Brought a fair amount of rain, some of it on the heavy side. In the last 12 hours, Montague Island picking up about 2 3/4 inches of rain, otherwise anywhere from 2 to 2 2/3 inches falling along the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula, and a little over 2 inches falling that 12-hour period at Portage Glacier. Otherwise, about 0.8 of an inch fell in Cordova. Seward picked up another 1/3 of an inch of precipitation. Much lighter amounts here across south central Alaska, although the western Susitna Valley, one location did record 3/4 of an inch of rain and snow, mostly in the form of rain, lower elevations, and a mixture up above. And then clouds spreading across much of the eastern interior Copper River Basin. That mostly mid and high level, a lot of ceilings up here north of the Alaska Range in the 7,000 to 8,000 foot category there, with not much of any precipitation falling from that, even back here to the west. And on out to the Arctic coast, really not much happening. Areas of fog and a few flurries right along the coastline there from Kaktovik, Barter Island, westward to Nuiqsut, Kivalina. Then the snow picks up a little bit, comes a little more widespread and a touch heavier as you get down toward Point Hope and Cape Lisburne. And some snow started this afternoon in Kotzebue, on down into Shishmaref and the Bering Strait. Nome picked up about inch of snow today. They had 1,300 water equivalent, and about that on the ground, not much more than that for a snow depth. And the southeast coast, rainfall occurring across much of the Panhandle. Even these southern areas picked up 1/4 of an inch. At Ketchikan, again, that's a 12-hour amount. A little bit heavier up to the north. Both Juneau, Gustavus had roughly 1/3 of an inch of precipitation today, with the heaviest back here along the North Gulf Coast and, of course, the Kenai Peninsula into Prince William Sound near the main frontal boundary. Here's that low tracking northward here in toward Kodiak Island. And again, just flurries up along the Alaska Range, areas of light snow occurring today. Really not much going on over the eastern Alaska Range areas. Definitely, as I mentioned, just mid and high level clouds into the Tanana Valley. But a little more precipitation back to the west here out toward the northern Bering and the Seward Peninsula. Northwest winds pretty gusty, up to 35 miles an hour or so, or 30 to 40 miles an hour over the Pribilofs on down to the eastern Aleutians. Actually gusts there in the 40 to 50 mile per hour range in the windier locations, and then dropping off markedly here, much slacker gradient over the Alaska Peninsula with some showers. And again, light rain at times over Kodiak Island. Flurries, fog up along the Arctic coast. And out to the west, a little bit of a break here. Just poised to move in toward the Pribilof, so your showers will probably end at any time. And this next system bringing some rainfall in. This portion of the front will weaken considerably going into tonight. That pushes eastward here. Again, a very weak occluded front will bring some more moisture, mixed precipitation into the Pribilofs. Mostly light rain staying north of the Aleutians. Some of that may slide on down into the Fox Islands, Unalaska, Nikolsky, Dutch Harbor, and then some warm front type rain, light rain, fog, drizzle, IFR conditions into the Alaska Peninsula. A little bit stronger trough here comes into the far western Aleutians tonight with mostly an increase in the rain, a little bit in the winds there, picking up out of the southwest. Otherwise, low pressure now up just south of the Seward Peninsula here. So areas of light snow showers continue, northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island. Probably those winds dropping off there, St. Lawrence Island. Main gradient reestablishes back over the Russian Far East. And light winds, cloudy skies, areas of light snow showers. Really, if you pick up anything more than 1/2 an inch, consider it a big bonus. Flurries and fog, central western Arctic coast, to a lesser extent on the east side. Maybe a band of light snow up here across the upper Yukon Valley, but amounts not really significant at all. And then rainfall on the moderate side continues, moderate to maybe heavy here for the North Gulf Coast, southern Kenai Peninsula, eastward to about Yakutat. Light rain over the northern panhandle with very weak warm front there, tapering off to showers. They'll probably end down across Prince of Wales Island. Could see some clearing, places like Metlakatla and Hyder, as well as Ketchikan, where you saw a little bit of rain today. And then taking a look at the Monday forecast for tomorrow, first day of the work week. Moderate rain now. Main range shifts over eastward with the main jet south to north slowly pushing eastward. So I'll take the heaviest precipitation with it and focus it mostly in on the Yakutat area. Otherwise, periods of light rain, lighter to just showers down over the southern southeast coast. More of a light rain, persistent light rain up to the north. And winds a little gusty along the coast. Could see definitely small craft advisories. Possible gale force winds are possible, but that'll diminish behind the front into the Gulf of Alaska. Winds start to turn west-northwest for Kodiak, but no big wind increases there. Weak ridging, and that should dry it out and produce light winds here across Bristol Bay. Still some flurries, areas of light snow, especially along this trough axis up into the upper Yukon Valley. Main low pressure keeps it cloudy and snowy over the Seward Peninsula. Again, Norton Sound on up into Kotzebue Sound, Noatak Valley, west side of the Arctic coast. And then this system puts enough of a squeeze on the atmosphere. You can see some pretty gusty winds, possibly gusts 50, 55 miles an hour as that front crosses the central Aleutians with periods of rain, scattering out the showers and then quickly ending back to the west. Rain, though, along the warm front all the way into the Alaska Peninsula with scattered rain and snow showers, mostly west of Bristol Bay, and the showers for Kodiak Island. And moving on into Tuesday, well, see, things don't really change a whole lot. A couple of weak lows here, one near the Kenai Peninsula, another one just south of Kodiak. That's actually the one that's crossing the Aleutians tomorrow. So it takes a turn up to the northeast there. Good northwest winds behind that with high pressure building in over the west central Aleutians and the western Bering. And then the low pressure here over the Yukon Delta. Good northerly flow now. Winds pick back up for St. Lawrence Island with gusts possibly as high as 40, 45 miles an hour. Maybe on up into the Bering Strait. Areas of light snow now, a little more widespread, and could be a little more accumulating here up over the northwest part of the state, Brooks Range, on out to the Arctic coast. Lighter though on the east side. and snow showers scattered around the Tanana Valley, Alaska Range, maybe in the Copper River Basin. Still warm enough for a mixed precipitation pattern, but whatever moisture there is will be quite light here over the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, Matanuska, even the Susitna Valley areas, and more moderate rain comes up into the eastern North Gulf Coast with that trough. Main front pushes through now, and still just some scattered showers over the southern panhandle with a little bit heavier rain up to the north, and maybe some clearing there around Kodiak Island and dry southern Cook Inlet, say from Seldovia Homer on back into maybe the Kuskokwim Valley. Low temperatures for tonight near zero. So really not falling much more than what you're seeing up there this afternoon. Temperatures running about 6 below at Arctic Village at mid-afternoon today. So kind of actually maybe warming up a little bit with moisture and clouds spreading northward there. A little below 0 to 5 below for the eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, teens mid to upper through the central interior and above freezing. Again, south central Alaska, mid-30s all the way down to the North Gulf Coast. Staying in the 40s there, Copper River Basin, a little below freezing. Lows in the 40s, 40 to 45, say, for the southeast coast, 35 to 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, near 40 for the Aleutians, mid-40s for the Bering Sea, all the way up to St. Lawrence Island, 20s for the Seward Peninsula. Highs upper 20s, lower 30s there for the Seward Peninsula, 20s into the Tanana Valley, near 20 for the Brooks Range, staying below 10 above there for the Arctic coast, and mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle, south central Alaska, mostly in the mid to upper 30s. A little cooler for Tuesday morning. Cooler conditions coming in. You see dropping into the lower 20s there around McGrath and Nikolai, lower to mid 20s along the southwest coast. Teens, mid-teens for the Tanana Valley, a little below 0 eastern Arctic coast, 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle. Afternoon highs into the mid-20s there for the Tanana Valley, lower to mid-30s now for south central Alaska. It's a little bit of a cooling trend going on here for the next couple of days, and highs staying above 0 on the Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather, a lot of IFR here, central interior, right on out to the coast, and then a narrow band right up across St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise, marginal VFR, Bering Sea Aleutians. The IFR way out there to the west and southwest, some IFR up along and mainly south of the central eastern, southeastern Brooks Range there. VFR, portions of the Arctic coast and North Slope. IFR, Gulf of Alaska into Prince William Sound, the North Gulf Coast, areas of the Copper River Basin. IFR over the northern Panhandle. VFR down south. And then for Monday afternoon, it looks like marginal VFR, Dixon entrance all the way up. A little bit of IFR there from roughly Port Alexander to maybe Sitka, and then IFR holding over the Lynn Canal Glacier Bay Area, IFR north coast here in the Coast Range, North Gulf Coast, all the way over to Passage Canal. Big area IFR now in the interior, eastern Brooks Range, all the way down into the lower Yukon River Valley to the Delta, and up into the eastern Seward Peninsula. And for Tuesday morning, IFR, eastern Arctic coast through the interior. Again, pretty big area here, right out to the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Kuskokwim Valley, up to and possibly east of the western Alaska Range there, and then along the central Alaska Range, IFR, North Gulf Coast, east side of the Kenai Peninsula, and a good portion of the Panhandle, IFR, especially over toward the border, marginal VFR, Bering Sea, the Aleutians, breaking out to VFR there, west of Adak on out to Shimianatu. And then for the afternoon, that area even expands. We got VFR now, Adak, Atka, all the way out to the western Aleutians, possibly the Komodorskis. Marginal VFR, eastern, northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island. All the IFR now inland, especially to the north here, northeast, eastern Beaufort Sea coast to back toward Point Barrow, and then southward through the Brooks Range. Kind of dissipating, but still a fair amount here in the southwest interior, the Alaska Range, North Gulf Coast, Coast Range there, and again holding about stationary over toward the eastern border of the Panhandle. Passes Anatuvik, marginal VFR, lowest conditions, probably IFR, especially in the afternoon on the southern entrance of both Anatuvik and Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR throughout most of the day tomorrow. Same forecast for rainy, looking pretty IFR-ish. And for windy, marginal VFR in the pass, IFR southern entrance, VFR on out to the north. And for Isabel, look for gradual improvement starting out IFR, possibly becoming marginal in the afternoon. And toward evening, Mentasta even better and improving. Marginal VFR becomes VFR into the afternoon. And Dehne occasionally marginal. Portage, IFR. Chilcoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels, 6,000 feet. Warm air shifting eastward now with the main jet also shifting eastward, south to north flow. So we've got 6,000 feet here over the southeast interior, 2,000 feet all the way up across the eastern upper Yukon Valley. Far north is the Porcupine River there, and 6,000 to 8,000 feet across the Panhandle. Cooler conditions out west. System tracking eastward here brings 4,000 feet up to the western Aleutians. And icing with that system. Some moisture for just isolated moderate rime icing, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, all the way out to Adak, but south of St. George Island. And also maybe some icing, could be some considerable moderate, but not too bad, kind of a narrow band here, Cook Inlet into the western Alaska Range. And some icing threats in along the North Gulf Coast. Again, continued south to north flow, could be some considerable moderate, but not a very widespread area there. Looks like in and around the Yakutat area. Jet stream, there's that southerly flow, 18,000 foot wind flow chart here with the 30,000 foot wind speed maxes at jet stream level. Got this upper low tracking northward, will be dissipating as it makes landfall tomorrow afternoon. The other one out here, looks like this one will slide to the southeast, so kind of cooler air mass now with this one coming up, dissipating, main jet pushing eastward, and looks like we're going to a cooling trend at least for a short period of time. Instead of the temperatures being 30 degrees above normal, they'll be about 10 degrees above normal for a few days, and they'll probably warm back up. And for 9,000 feet, southerlies 25 to 35 into the North Gulf Coast, diminishing as you head north, and westerlies strongest out here over the Aleutians. Couple at this trough, putting a squeeze in the atmosphere, up to 50 knots there in the central Aleutians, northwest 50, the Alaska Peninsula, 3,000 feet, more of a southwest flow here, 30 knots, 50 knots over the central Aleutians. And taking a look at turbulence, moderate chop, central Aleutians right up to southwest Kodiak Island and the central and southern southeast coast.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and we have a special guest in the studio today. We welcome Amanda Terborg of the Aviation Weather Center. Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Amanda's flown in all the way from Kansas City, and for those of you that don't know, the Aviation Weather Center serves the lower 48 for aviators, just as the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit here in Anchorage serves all of Alaska. So I kind of wonder, what's the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City doing to help out Alaska, Amanda?
Yeah, you know, we do a lot of collaboration work with our sister station up here. Lately, we've been doing a lot of work, especially in the satellite meteorology.
Okay.
In particular, we have been looking at ways to better identify icing conditions in clouds, which is a big deal up here because, as I'm coming to find out, even though I'm not from here, you guys have a lot of pilots here.
We have a lot of pilots. In fact, when you say you can't get there from here, that's how you get there.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so with icing potential then, what's Kansas City working on?
Well, we are working on something that will help us, again, identify the icing in the clouds. You don't want ice on your aircraft.
No.
Not only does it add a whole bunch of extra weight to your airframe when it attaches to the wings and the nose cone, but it can also mess with your aerodynamics.
Right.
And in the most serious conditions, that can mess with it enough that you can actually crash.
It changes the shape of the wing, and that makes it sometimes impossible to fly, right?
It does, yeah. So we want to figure out a way to better forecast for that.
Makes sense.
Now this particular image is over Alaska. The colors here are a little goofy. It doesn't look like your run-of-the-mill satellite image.
Okay.
But the red is where you have liquid clouds and the blue is ice. But again, it really doesn't tell you a lot where you have icing conditions in that cloud. Because in those clouds there's little droplets and they're cold and they're actually below freezing, but they're still liquid. And that makes them sticky.
Okay.
So when an aircraft flies through there, those droplets are sticking to the aircraft and it can happen amazingly fast.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to find. And there is a product called the Aircraft Flight Icing Threat that does this. And it's basically looking at the temperature of the cloud, and it's also looking at the size of the droplets to identify a probability and intensity of those icing conditions.
Okay.
And if you flip to the next image, this is a case from Juneau, Alaska, where this probably wouldn't have been the best day to fly around Juneau.
Okay.
Now there was an area of moisture that pushed south from the southwest up along the coast that pushed in a stratus layer. And in the stratus layer there was a lot of those super cooled liquid drops or a lot of stickiness.
Okay.
And So the flight icing threat was able to, in the pinks and the reds there, was able to identify where that icing was. Now this is really cool. You know, it's really cool to be able to identify that. There is, you know, of course, caveats to every product. Much as we wish it would happen, sun doesn't shine all the time, unless, I guess, if you live in northern Alaska during the summertime.
Right.
But we need that sun to be able to bounce off those clouds and to be able to see where those super cool drops are.
Okay, so it's a daytime only tool.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, of course, you know, we're in the era of advanced satellite technology, and there is a satellite that can actually use moonlight to see clouds.
Yes.
And so sometime in the future, we hope to be able to do that.
Okay.
Another thing that is a bit of a challenge is multiple layers of clouds. You know, you can only see so far through a thick cloud.
Okay.
And if it's thick enough, sometimes you can't see a layer of icing that's below there.
Right.
But even besides those caveats, this product has a lot of potential to help out Alaskan aviators here.
Well, it sounds like a really big deal, and something that forecasters at the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit could use probably on a daily basis, and especially in the middle of a really big storm.
Yeah, I would think so.
Do you have a really good success story in the lower 48 using this tool?
You know, it's a fairly new product, and so we're still evaluating it. But yeah, we have had a lot of cases where we have seen that it does tend to capture those icing conditions.
Okay, very good. Well, Amanda, thanks so much for sharing some of the very interesting satellite imagery and the tools that you're using there at the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City with us here in Alaska. People can probably find some of this information online, right?
Yeah, here is a website here. It's a page from NASA Langley, and they have this imagery as well as a bunch of other satellite imagery that you can take a look at.
Okay, great. And I'm sure our friends at the Alaska Aviation Weather Center and the unit will be using that in the coming months there with your training and your help there to learn more about that tool to help Alaska aviators any day of the year. That's wonderful stuff. So thanks again for joining us, Amanda, and we welcome you to view any of our Alaska weather facts on YouTube anytime at the address below, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. New growth here along the southwest coast, here south Norton Sound on down Yukon, Kuskokwim Delta coastline into Kuskokwim Bay, although this afternoon some of that already showing signs of beginning to melt a little bit due to the flow. But over the next several days, probably continue to see some ice growth all along the west coast here. Ice edge up to the north, the main ice field slowly coming southward. Coastal water forecast, small craft advisories. Pretty uniform wind and wave pattern here along the outer coastline tomorrow. Southeast 25 seas 10 to 14 feet. Gale force gusts over the inside waters out of the southeast. Otherwise sustained 20 to 25 Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait. South 24-foot seas for Lynn Canal. Outlook for Tuesday. South to southeast over all of the inside waters on Tuesday at 15 knots with 3 to 4 foot seas. Much lighter winds on the south coast, just 10 out of the west there in the extreme south coast, Prince of Wales Island, seas 10 feet. 15 knots turn southerly at 15 and then pick up a little bit to 20 knots with 10-foot seas on the north coast. Prince William Sound, southeast 25 knots tomorrow, seas 6 feet. Southeast 25, all of the North Gulf Coast 10 to 11-foot seas. Swinging around to the northwest, 30 knots. Small craft advisories here for the Barren Islands, 10-foot sea. Gale force northwesterlies for Kamishak Bay with seas at 11 feet. Cook Inlet, northerlies 15 to 20 knots with 4-foot seas. Outlook for Tuesday, north of the Forelands, light northwesterlies at 10, slight seas, 15 knots. Southern Cook Inlet with 3-foot seas. Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, west 25 knots, 7 to 8-foot seas. And west-southwest for the North Gulf Coast now, seas 8 to 9 feet. Prince William Sound, winds coming down to about 15 knots with seas at 3 feet. Kodiak Island, west-northwest, 30 knots tomorrow. Some higher gusts here out of the bays on the east side of the island. And seas running 8 to 12 feet. Alaska Peninsula, west winds, 30 knots. Seas 12 feet. Bristol Bay, same forecast. West winds 30 knots. Seas 11 feet. And for Tuesday, northwest 20 there for Bristol Bay. Castle Cape to Sitkinak. And up the east side of Kodiak, westerlies at 20 knots with seas running 8 feet. West 15 with 3-foot seas for Shelikof Strait. Northwest across the peninsula, small craft advisories, 25 to 30 knot winds with 12-foot seas. Out west, looks like some gale force winds here with that, again, that system scooting eastward. tightening the gradient up enough for gale force winds. Minimum gales 35 knots from the southwest, otherwise northwest 30. Kiska on out to Shemya, 12-foot seas. Fox Islands west becoming southwest here toward Nikolsky at 30 knots with 11 to 13-foot seas. And then for Tuesday, northwest 25 to 30 knots there for the Fox Islands. And those seas running up to 13 feet. Lighter winds in store for Adak and Atka, northwest coming down to 20 knots, as well as subsiding seas under 10 feet, and 20-knot winds all the way out to Shemya and Attu becoming easterly for the far western zone. Southwest coast, small craft advisories tomorrow, 25 to 30 knots out of the west, 7 to 11-foot seas, west 20 for the Pribilofs, 8-foot seas, northwest 20 for St. Matthew Island, seas at 8 feet, north 20 for St. Lawrence Island with 7-foot seas, southeast in Norton Sound only at 15. Those become south at 15 on Tuesday. Increase in the northerly winds now, 30 knots, St. Lawrence Island, northwest 30 along the southwest coast, seas 11 to 12 feet. 30-knot northwest winds also here from the northern Bering Sea down across the Pribilofs with 11 to 12-foot seas. Eastern Boulevard Sea coast looks like gale force winds there on the extreme eastern zone, 35 knots out of the east, otherwise brisk wind advisories all the way to the central coast, 25 to 30 knots, northeast 25, small craft advisories here on the west side, all the way down to Norton Sound, all out of the northeast with seas running 6 to 9 feet. Outlook for Tuesday, north 25 knots, Wales to Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, northeast 25, and then east 25. And brisk wind advisories continue here. Lose the gales come down to 30 knots for that extreme eastern zone. And then tonight, areas of light snow or flurries possible here up over the northeast, otherwise very light amounts. Winter weather advisory continues tonight through tomorrow for the Alaska Range into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, all the way out to Seward. And some rain with a weakening system pushes eastward into the eastern and southeast Bering Sea, followed by a little bit stronger impulse here coming eastward. Now kick those winds up in the central Aleutians with warm front rains into the Fox Islands. Light rain continues to the Panhandle. And the next day, rainy over the southeast coast with some snow in the western interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.